But a hoe's final form is overly religious. Let's talk about this. That's literally the whole point. We want anybody that abuses their body, any drug addict, any alcoholic, sex addict, to find Jesus. In fact, a lot of people that have very promiscuous lives had some type of trauma happen to them when they were younger, some type of sexual trauma, molestation. So what happens is, as a trauma response, is they go out living very promiscuous lives. Now what happens is when somebody like that finds Jesus, they find that going out and continuously abusing their body like their abuser did to them is not going to heal them. So what happens is they find Jesus, and Jesus heals them and renews them and tells them who their identity is and what Jesus views them as. And it's a beautiful, wonderful process. So I don't like comments like this. I don't like posts like this. If you look at someone who is abusing their body sexually, it's almost like an act of just spiritual suicide. Same with alcohol, same with drugs. You're opening yourself up for other things to possess you. It's literally an act of spiritual suicide. Your spirit is literally dying. So when someone like that is able to come to Jesus, and then from living a life of promiscuity, learn a life of self-control and self-discipline, from being able to go and sleep with all these different type of men to sleeping with nobody and waiting till marriage and having that type of self-control, that's a huge switch. And don't forget, ladies, anyone that had a past who was promiscuous, just remember that Mary Magdalene was accused of being a promiscuous woman herself and being a prostitute. But she literally was a disciple, one of Jesus's most loyal disciples, was there at the cross and was there when he rose from the dead. One of the most important figures, and she had a past. So don't let any post like that or any comment like that take away your importance to Jesus.
Welcome back to the channel. You see the information on the screen, so you know what I'm about. Let's get into it. So Jada Bell, and this is from the Jada Bell podcast. I actually like a lot of the stuff, that she puts out, and I'm not against this video. I did want to go a little bit more into it, and hit it from a couple of different angles, but I did want to read what she put as the, header comment description of this particular video. She says, I always hate seeing comments like this or posts. The whole point of turning to Christ is to heal and gain a healthy relationship with yourself by viewing yourself the way Christ views you. A lot of these people who abuse their bodies had some form of trauma in their past or childhood. I understand that we must hold people accountable for the actions, but to make fun of those who turn to Christ. Isn't making fun of someone who stopped hurting themselves, and she literally just says it like that, shouldn't we be applauding them? The whole point of speaking truth is so people seek help and get rid of self-destructive behaviors. But when they're being mocked for coming to Christ, this will never happen, right? And so congratulations to all those with the past who turned to Christ and are trying their very best today to have self-control and discipline. All right, so basically, if you have not seen this around social media, y'all know we love social media, a lot of people have been talking about the final form of a woman that's very promiscuous, a 304, a hoe, a city girl, whatever you want to call them, is a Christian woman. All right. And, and it's always funny, again, how we get to these places. And I'll be honest with you, I understand the people out there that are saying this. Both men and women are actually saying this, not just men. And I do see and understand what they're talking about. And a lot of it can go back to, the prodigal son. So a lot of people don't know this. And I'll be honest, I didn't even know this. But if you go and you look at the prodigal son's story, Jesus doesn't start the story by saying a man had one son. He actually says a man had two sons. And that's actually where he starts the story. And people focus in on the man that was doing wrong. But Jesus actually talks about both sons individually. So it's really not the story of the prodigal son. It's more of the story of two sons who have gone down two different paths. It is just that the Christian community, when they first saw the story, they leaned more towards one son than the other. But Jesus was actually trying to talk about both people. All right. And I'll admit, the first time I ever heard a pastor talk into this, I was, checked in my spirit, because I wasn't, like I said, if you know the story of the prodigal sons, the man had two sons. And so what happens is one guy, he goes into the world. And he goes and he spends his money, he lays up with prostitutes, he just has fun, and he ends up, eating the slop of pigs. And then the other son does everything that his dad tells him to do. Okay. And then what happens is the son that was, astray, that was eating the pig slop, comes back home. And when he comes back home, the son that was doing everything right is offended. And he's offended because he's like, I did everything right. And as soon as this dude came back, you accepted him 100%, just like he had never left, just like he had never done these things. And I've done all these things, and I've done the right things. And you've never let me have a party. You've never done anything extra for me. And now I'm mad about this guy, a father, which is basically, supposed to be God, right? And see, again, that's how you have to look at it. Even in the comments, a lot of times, sometimes some of the things that people say in the comments, it lets me know that, again, you're very young in Christ, because you have no forgiveness in your heart, right? And so it works the same way when we start to talk about, women that have come to Christ because, now they're trying, to live the better life. They're trying to do the right thing, and all of that. And so I want to make sure that I kind of said that, to Jada Bell's point, because when you are a woman or a man that has been out there in the world and you decide to turn your life and come back to God, or just come back to trying to live a better life, okay, you're going to hit a little bit of ridicule from the people who never lived that way. And there's a little bit of jealousy in there. There's a little bit of just frustration in there. And there's a little bit of, I'm just being real. It's like I said, from my perspective, because I would have been the good son. Like I said, I'm not saying everything I did in my life, was awesome. But I didn't spend my time, in bars and in, in all these other types of clubs and all these other types of places. That's not what I did. I worked. I was doing my work. I was doing my job. I was, pushing, down that path that I'm always talking about, that train engine going down the path, And so I was, for the most part, from a human perspective, I was doing the right thing, right? And again, that's from the human perspective, not from the God perspective, right? And so what happened was, it's the equivalent of once we all are sitting up with God at the end of the day, and God says, okay, all y'all, he like Oprah, all y'all get a Mercedes SUV, yeah, And then I'm sitting there and I'm like, but God, I didn't sin like these people. I didn't do all the bad stuff they did. In fact, half of these people, when they died, they was like bankrupt. They was like in $500,000 worth of debt. They, were abusing people. They were doing this. They, murdered people. And we're the same. How are we the same? And I think, you have to understand both sons. So I just want to put that there to make sure that we're on the same page when it comes to that. Okay, when it comes to that piece. Now let's switch gears. Okay, so let's switch gears. I think for a lot of men, when they say the final form, of a 304 is a Christian woman, what they're talking about is from a human perspective. Okay, we got to take God out of it now. Okay, we got to take Jesus out of it. They're saying from a human perspective, you have a woman who has done all this stuff in her past. And then she wants the man, in her life to forgive her of it and to look beyond it without her 100% completing the work. And then many times she wants to lie about it instead of being open and honest. See, one of the things that was really interesting, because I know some of you might have seen this all over the internet, where people are talking about women and accountability. And one of the things that I have issue with Tony Gaskins, those that have been following me for a while, is that one of the things that I have an issue with him is that he encourages women not to be honest. And what he says is, these men will use your honesty against you. And my argument has always been you should be looking for men that are healed, that are walking in their purpose, that are doing what they need to do, right? And so no man, really likes it when a woman comes in and she's not honest. And I think that's a big thing for a lot of men. And when people talk about accountability within social media, that's also some of what they're talking about. Being accountable for poor actions. So I'll try to give you a little bit about kind of what I mean by this. Say, for instance, I'll run into a woman who basically has, maybe she was married before, maybe she wasn't, maybe she was in a lot of relationships, or maybe she was just a little bit loose. So by the time I run into her, we're just going to give her a body count of 30. All right. That's a lot of people. So we're just going to give her a body count of 30. And I'm basically, trying to talk to her and stuff like that, and really trying to kind of understand, who she is. And then she comes to me, she's like, well, I want to be, abstinent until we get married. That was, there's something I want, I just believe in Jesus and all this other kind of stuff. Right. And some, guys have heard these types of stories. And part of, the beginning of that is if a woman comes in and she says that, in some ways, that is very admirable. But there's always, okay, what is the reason behind it, right? And I can't go all deep into this particular video, but if you know, and if you've been following me for a while, I'll tell people straight up, is that abstinence or no abstinence is not what's going to get you married. Okay, we're not talking about from a godly perspective. We're talking about you have to do certain things. You have to be a certain type of person to get married. But right now we're focusing solely on the sex, okay? Solely on, like I say, the amount of sex that a person has had, okay? Because this is really important to understand it at that granular level. And this is where I'm a little bit, in disagreement with Jada Bell. Not to say that she would not agree with me, but in her post, she didn't go into depth, all right? And so I'm trying to go into depth, and I'm hoping that you can follow me. So the man, runs into her. I run into this woman. She's, has this body count, but maybe she doesn't want to tell me. Instead, what she's trying to tell me is, oh, well, I, just want to be abstinent. And then if I ask her, I'll say, well, or maybe if I'm just around her for a long period of time, she either acts like she has not been with that many men, or if I ask her directly, she doesn't want to say it. She doesn't want to talk about it. She wants to, quote unquote, leave it in her past. And see, that becomes that problem where a lot of men have an issue. Or for say, maybe she has children by those past relationships. And because of those children, okay, now she wants me to step in and take care of those children. Okay, 2, 3, 4, 5 children that she's had with other men. And see, that becomes the reality that a lot of Christian men are talking about. Really, not even Christian men, just men in general. They're talking about it. And they're basically saying from a humanistic perspective, whatever you do, you have to be accountable for those things. Now, a child is a totally different thing, all right? Because that's another living, breathing human that has emotions, that has traumas, that has frustrations, that has hopes, that has dreams. So from that perspective, right now, again, we'll take them out. And we'll just say that this woman has only, had a lot of sex with a lot of different men. Okay. And so now she's trying to clean her life up, and she's trying to say, hey, yes, I want to be with you. I want to be in a relationship with you. And see, it's different if a woman finds a mature man, a masculine man, and says, look, I'm just going to be real. I've had a lot of sex. I've had a lot of sex with a lot of different men, and, it never fulfilled me. It never really gave me what, I'm trying to, do out here. And I want to be a better person. I want to be that good wife. I know I can be that wife. But yes, I have done, some things, and I probably had sex way too much. And I probably did even some, things like threesomes and stuff like that I really should not have done. And now, again, I'm trying to change my life. And after a very long conversation with a man, she gets all of this out, which is going to make her feel better. And if she's dealing with a mature man that likes her, he can now make the decision on whether or not he wants to stay with her. But if he does make that decision of wanting to stay with her, he is now in that he's now basically saying, it's okay. I can deal with this. Okay, now let's just move forward, and go down that path. And see, I believe that there's a lot of women that, either they don't have the courage to do that, or they just simply don't believe that they will be accepted. Or, like I said, like people like Mr. Gaskins try to encourage women not to do that. And see, to me, like I said, you have to look at it from a perspective of the man and how he's seeing it. Because the man will, might feel as though you're lying to him, as though you're trying to keep this information away from him. And therefore, that in itself causes frustration. And, and like I said, there's a lot of men out here that are immature. There's a lot of men out here that can't handle it. But I've always said, don't pick the average man. And when we're talking about average here, I'm not talking about money. I'm not talking about, his height or anything like that, or his leadership abilities. What I'm talking about is he's a good guy that will take care of you. He's mature. He's walking, and doing what he needs to do. And then from that perspective, okay, you're open and honest. And then you're basically saying, okay, I am willing, to go there with you. Because, see, I think that's really where the problem is, okay, when it comes to men and why they say these things, because I wanted to talk about that. So like I said, I talked about it from the perspective of Christ. Talked about it from the perspective of man. Now let's talk about it from the perspective of how we need to fix this. So, recently, many of you might have watched those videos. It's always interesting. Some of you guys don't watch the interviews, but there's a lot of really good information in those collabs and interviews, and you really should go back and check out some of them. But anyway, I was talking to Ty from The Shy. So me and her were talking, and she actually talked about this very thing, not necessarily from a Christian perspective, not necessarily from a 3 or 4 perspective, but more from a perspective that's saying, hey, yeah, a lot of women are making a lot of mistakes. And so what I was saying was, when somebody is in their 20s, women in their 20s, how can we get to them? How can we get them the good information? Because a lot of times they've hurt themselves in their 20s. By the time they're in their 30s, they're trying to fix it, right? And see, that becomes where the issue is. A lot of women have done all of this dirt. They've gone through all this. And see, the problem with all of this is that men can feel, okay, that energy in a woman. A lot of women don't think that they can, but a lot of men can. And so now it's a different type of baggage that the woman is bringing into a relationship. And now when she's 30, she's trying to scramble. So she has her emotions all going, plus all this baggage, even though we might not see it, is still there. And then she's trying to hurry up between 30 and 40 to try to hurry up and get married, generally about 35, to be honest with you. And then now it's all of this stress. And now the man is thinking, okay, why, again, would I deal with all of that? So Ty from The Shy believes that we have to start talking to the youth, like literally like 13-year-olds. But the problem with that is we have no access to the 13-year-old. And the Board of Education, okay, even though there's a lot of different things going on right now in the government, but each individual school system is going to dictate what those children learn. And that becomes, a barrier that stops a lot of 13 through 18-year-olds getting the right information so that they can make better decisions when they actually come into the real world. And because our enemy However you want to phase that, whether you want to say that's the man or you want to say that is, from a spiritual perspective, the devil, you have people wanting to teach children a certain thing. Because if you're rich and you have power and you have money, I'll be honest with you, single parents are great money makers. Great money makers. See, people keep trying to act like the church makes money off of single women. The biggest people that make money off single people is everybody else, not the church. Because the church, it's hard for the church to squeeze out 10%, out of a woman, which is really all they're asking for is 10%. But it's hard if she's, scrambled and her back is up against the wall with bills. It's better for them to be in a family so that they have more excess money so that they can give it to the church. But the rest of the world does better. I mean, honestly, why sell one apartment when you can rent two? Why rent one house or sell one house when you can sell two? See, as soon as you have everybody split, now you can double the amount of everything that you can sell. Cell phones cost more money at that point. Wi-Fi costs more money. Like even if you have something like your internet, whatever your internet is paying, how much you're paying. If you're paying, let's say you're paying $90 a month for internet for your home or your apartment. Even if you had somebody move in with you, that bill's still $90. You had two people move in, the bill's still $90. So there you get a savings attached to the fact that multiple people can use one Wi-Fi, can use one internet, right? You get savings when you're living with people. You get savings when you're sharing resources. But you don't get savings when the resources are split. And that, in essence, is where more money is made. And so what ends up happening when we start to talk about, all these things is the woman, again, let's switch back, to the final, point of this video, is that a lot of women, they really did not know where to go. They were taught wrong by their parents. They were, whether they saw their mom do it or their mom told them a certain thing, they were just taught wrong. And then they have girlfriends, and none of the girlfriends, told them anything better, because the girlfriends didn't know anything better either. They all come from the same neighborhood. They all come from the same walk of life. And the reason, honestly, why they got along in class was because they had things in common. So now this whole group of women is going down pretty much the same path. And anytime somebody tries to come in and tries to tell them something different, their peer group is now saying, girl, that's crazy. That's crazy. We don't need to do that. We need to do this. And so now they're in their, like I say, teens, 20s, and then they're going to church and they're listening, but then they're not really paying attention because they got all these men. They're having a good life. They're having a good time. And everybody keeps telling them, hey, spend your 20s and have fun. But then they get closer and closer to 30 and they have no marriage opportunities in front of them. And now they're thinking, I'm starting to turn into my mom. And I promised myself when I was 12, I would never be like my mom. And so now they turn to the church. But the church doesn't have answers. Because if it had answers, it would have started to talk to these women when they were 18. And the church knows that 70%, especially the black church, knows that 70% of the women in the church are single. 70%. Most black churches know this. But yet they don't even spend 30% of their time talking about singleness, talking about getting married, talking about how do you be a better woman. They'll spend a few little things here and there, maybe one conference a year, maybe do some things around Valentine's Day. But once that's done, they move on with the rest of their service. They don't see this as a major thing that they need to be concerned about, because 9 times out of 10, the pastor is, like I say, a former Pookie or Raymond. He's up in the pulpit. He gets plenty of game, has always gotten it his whole life. He probably married somebody in the congregation. And so he's good. And he's not thinking about it. And he don't care. And he's never sat down at the granular level to feel how these women are feeling. So these women are now throwing themselves into the church, and the only thing the pastor can tell them is, okay, be abstinent. But the problem with abstinence is, like I said, that doesn't teach you how to get married. It doesn't. I've been trying to tell y'all that over and over again. You could be abstinent as a woman from now until you die, okay, and it doesn't matter. And I'll be honest with you, there's no guarantee from God that you're going to get married. There is no guarantee in the Bible. And just because you are trying to be holy with your body, that does not mean that you're going to get married. That's why I talk about the skills of what a wife looks like and how to find a husband. That's why I talk about that all the time on this channel. Okay, because I'm trying to get you over that hump. But the abstinence piece is what most churches preach because they don't know anything else. And so now the woman is put in a situation where she's confused, but she believes if I'm holy enough, if I'm abstinent enough, then I'll find my husband. But one of the main problems, and a lot of Christian men have gone through this, and I'm going to be honest with you, a lot of ladies, you're not abstinent until you have a man that you like in front of you. And I really want all of you to really get that. And even the men that, are trying to be abstinent, I want you to understand that. Until you have a person that you're extremely attracted to, that you get along with well, that you're comfortable with, and they're in front of you, until you're at that place, you're technically not abstinent. I can say, for example, I am trying to, I'm trying not to eat cake. I'm just not going to eat cake. I'm abstaining from cake, whatever it is. And through that process, I bring no cake into my house. I don't get around cake. If I hear, people at my 9 to 5 saying, hey, we got cake in the break room, I just avoid that area. But what happens when I sit down with a friend and then all of a sudden they pop out a piece of cake? And then through that piece of cake, they're like, oh man, have this, man. My wife made this, or my friend made this, or my mama made this, man. This is like the best cake ever, man. You got to try this cake, dude. This is like the best cake. And then now, not only is it in my face, something that I really want to partake in, but I'm being encouraged to partake in it. And I can't necessarily, with ease, I can't necessarily run away from it. That, in that moment, if I say no, in that moment, I'm like, dude, I just can't do it right now. Now I'm being abstinent because it's right there. And it wants, and it's basically, I have the ability to get it. And see, this is why a lot of Christian women, a lot of men laugh at them when they say I'm abstinent, because a lot of times what happens is these Christian women will date men that they're really not sexually attracted to, but they're trying to find their husband. So they're saying, oh, okay, I'll try something different. And then they'll get around maybe another type of guy that has a little bit more of the energy that they like. And immediately before you know it, they kissing, and then the clothes just poof off. They just poof. They just gone. All right. And then you don't know. You wake up in the morning, you're like, oh, crap. You don't even know what happened. Why? Because you weren't really abstaining from anything. You were abstaining from the air. And it's really important for women, especially, to know this, because I run into so many women that'll say, oh, I've been abstinent for 2 years. I've been abstinent for 3 years. I've been abstinent for 5 years. And then they'll get around a man that they like, that they think they might have a future with, that has a little bit of the energy that they like. And then within 2 weeks, he's been, they've been intimate. And now she's upset. And she's like, I sacrificed 2 years. I sacrificed 5 years. No, you didn't sacrifice those things, boo. You were just single. If you are not dating someone, okay, you're not abstinent. You're just single. When you're dating someone that you like, that you see a future with, and then you're not having sex with them, then you're abstinent. Whatever it is that you're abstaining from has to be present. Otherwise, there is no abstinence. So I just wanted to go over this whole thing because I think all of this is really important, for what people are talking about, when it comes to this. So hopefully you got something from this. Remember, on Thursday, every other Thursday, we actually come out here. We do the Zoom call. It's a lot of fun. It's at 7 p.m. Eastern. So I think so that would be 6 p.m. Central, 5 p.m., 4 p.m. in California. So California people might have to listen to us on the way home, but everybody else, you'll already be home. So yeah, we're usually out for about 2 hours. So even if you're running a little late, please hop on. It's a lot of fun. I get to learn a lot. Other people get to learn a lot. And so you need to get, like I say, your voice out there. Even if you're just in the comments, like I say, you don't have to necessarily join the Zoom call itself. You could just come to YouTube, let the, come to the page, right, at your time, like I say, 7654, come, at that time and just, maybe 5 minutes in, just refresh, your browser and it'll pop up. And so you can just join. I do try to answer the questions that are in the comments, but, that way, we can have like an open dialogue and really get, this information out there to help each other. All right. So please like, please subscribe, and I'm going to see you all in the very next video.